If civilizations really do reset over and over again, then the most important knowledge, it would never survive as books or buildings or machines. All of that stuff burns, it sinks, it decays, it gets erased, sometimes deliberately, sometimes accidentally, every single time the world fractures. So what does survive? Symbol, pattern, story, a kind of structure that can be carried in the human mind, passed down through blood, through language, through ritual. And if you look across all of human history, there is no symbol more persistent than the tree of life. This image, it just appears everywhere. Not in one culture, not in one religion. We're talking across continents, across oceans, across thousands of years. So the question isn't really what the tree of life is. The real question is why. Why did it refuse to disappear? And here's the truly remarkable thing. It's not just that the symbol shows up everywhere. It's that its fundamental design is identical. You have cultures that never met, that never traded, that never shared a language, and yet they all preserved the same core structure: a central axis, roots below, branches above, with life flowing through it. If you go back to the earliest civilizations in Mesopotamia, the tree of life represented cosmic order, a vertical structure linking the heavens, the human world, and the underworld. Now, this wasn't a metaphor in our modern sense. To them, it was architecture, a map of reality as they understood it. It was a way to organize existence itself into layers, flows, and thresholds. Then you look at ancient Egypt, and this knowledge appears again with the Ishid tree. It's associated with eternal life, with divine record-keeping, with continuity beyond death. And resurrection, well, it wasn't presented as some miracle or a reward. It was a process, a cycle, governed by law, by memory, and by alignment. In the biblical tradition, the tree of life stands right at the center of Eden. And it wasn't just decoration, it represented access that was later restricted. But then, at the very end of Revelation, the tree returns, and its leaves are described as medicine for the nations. So the story begins with access lost, and it ends with access restored. It's not about judgment, it's the completion of a cycle. For the Celtic traditions, the sacred tree stood at the physical and spiritual heart of the community. And again, it wasn't symbolic, it was functional, a meeting point between worlds. Ancestors, the living, and the unborn were all connected through it. Life, death, and rebirth weren't seen as separate domains. They were just phases of a single continuum. In Norse cosmology, the scale just expands again. Yggdrasil isn't a tree inside the world. It is the structure of the world itself. You have 9 realms suspended within its branches and roots. Gods, humans, giants, and other beings, they're all just occupying different layers of the same system. Existence is stratified, not divided. It's all connected, not isolated. Then, in the east, the image turns inward. The Bodhi tree becomes the site of awakening. But this isn't about escape or salvation. It's about recognition. It's consciousness remembering itself and its place within the larger order. So you see, different cultures, different names, different stories, but always the same structure. Now, when scholars try to explain this away, they often point to psychology or metaphor. Trees give shelter, trees give food, they represent growth. But those explanations just collapse under the sheer scale of this. Symbolism alone cannot explain an identical cosmological architecture appearing independently all over the planet, across time, across civilizations separated by oceans and millennia. There's a much more uncomfortable possibility, isn't there? That this symbol is not an invention, but an inheritance. A memory that was carried forward from a time before our civilization fractured. A compressed record of how reality actually works. And if this really is an inherited record of reality, then we should expect to see echoes of its structure in our own scientific understanding. And this is precisely where ancient myth collides with modern science. This ancient map of reality finds its echo in the patterns being discovered by our most advanced disciplines. What was once described through myth is now being measured by science, and it's revealing the same fundamental architecture at every single scale of existence. For example, genetics confirms that all life on Earth shares common ancestry. Every organism branches from earlier forms. Life did not evolve as a straight line. It evolved as a network, a living tree. And that's not poetic language. That is literal biology. Then astrophysics reveals the very same structure on a cosmic scale.
Galaxies don't just scatter randomly. They form filaments, branching networks, vast, luminous webs stretching across billions of light years. We call this the cosmic web.
Neuroscience shows the same pattern in the human brain. Rivers carve it into the earth. Lightning writes it across the sky. Blood vessels follow it through the body. Lungs branch this way. Trees branch this way. It seems reality itself prefers this structure. This is not a coincidence. This is efficiency. This is law. The tree of life is not a symbol pointing at something else. It is the diagram that ancient people used to describe the architecture of existence itself, using the only language they had available to them. So when we recognize this universal structure, governing life, consciousness, and the cosmos, it allows us to answer another unsettling question. Why does crucial knowledge survive civilizational resets as myth and not as machines? Why do stories endure when empires collapse? Well, think it through. If non-human intelligences existed, if civilizations rose and fell before ours, if cosmic conflicts occurred on scales we no longer recognize, then knowledge would fracture, survivors would scatter, bloodlines would carry memory, and symbols would become the only safe containers for truth. So the tree of life might not be a metaphor for peace or harmony at all. It may be a record of survival, a map of realms, a memory of connection, even a warning, encoded in its branches and roots. This is why myth matters, because myth isn't childhood. Myth is compressed history, and the code within it keeps pointing back to cycles. This is why the same narratives repeat over and over. Chosen bloodlines, fallen beings, forbidden knowledge, wars in the sky, catastrophic resets, control systems built on the fear of one's own spirit. The wars may not have ended. They may have simply changed form.